Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Lemons, and welcome to another episode of LemonTalks. Now, I already talked about it earlier today because I had made a post online discussing the topic of today, and I said that we were going to cover several reboots and talk about what made them successful and what made them fail. This turned out to be an extremely large venture, far too large to keep contained within one episode. It still did not take my interest out of the topic, and I believe that some of you viewers will be interested in it as well. So today, here are 3 questions that I want to carry with us through this series. Why do shows get rebooted? Are they successful? And if they're successful, what makes the reboot successful? Now, we are going to cover this over 6 episodes. We're going to do 5 different rebooted series and also cover information on their predecessors about why they got canceled in the first place, and then why the reboot stayed on as long or even got cut shorter than the original. So for today, we are going to look into Fuller House and see what made it successful, but why it failed to stay alive as long as Full House. Now, today when we're talking about Full House and Fuller House, I do want to get credit to my top 2 sources. One of them is going to be a collaborative review by Paul Asay, Emily Sau, and Stephen Isaac at pluggedin.com, as well as an interview with David Collier at screenrant.com. Now, its predecessor, Full House, ran from 1987 to 1995. That is 8 years, for those of you that just want the quick maths. And saw big names like John Stamos, Bob Saget, Lori Loughlin, and Dave Collier, as well as a few other notable child actors. Many of you will know that the Olsen twins actually got their starts from Full House. Now, this show was loved for its ability to tell relatable, family-friendly stories week after week that would touch and capture the hearts of millions of viewers worldwide. While some of the shows that we look at in this series definitely owe their second chance or opportunity at a second run to social media, I think that this is one of the few that we will talk about where a resurgence of sorts was already cooking, even without the big surge on social media. Many people loved this show by the time that it went out. In fact, it was a top 25 show on national cable television when it got taken off of the air. Now, the reason that the show was ultimately canceled was because of how expensive the show was to produce itself. We're going to cover the statistics right now because Dave Collier enlightened us to this fact in the interview that he gave. A total of 192 episodes were made of Full House. All of them, as any TV show should be, were decently expensive for those of us with a regular pocketbook. The last 2 seasons, however, were the most expensive to make, with a $1.3 million per episode that were required in order to put it on TV and put everything together for it. And they had 24 episodes each. So we can already see that this had become a costly venture. But to put a number to it, that was $62.5 million just to make the last 2 seasons of Full House. And this show was on for 8 years, 8 full seasons. So ultimately, this show wasn't canceled because people stopped liking it, stopped enjoying it, didn't want to see it anymore, had gotten tired of the characters, thought that the plot was drab, or anything like that. It was canceled because the network could no longer pay to keep it running. And so now we're going to delve into Fuller House. The 3 reviewers whose names I mentioned earlier watched the series in its entirety, a couple of them watching episodes as they came out, and they compiled their reviews, and they spoke as to why the show was a success in the beginning, but eventually why people fell off with the show. Many parents felt that they didn't know if they would be able to let their kid watch with them week to week because of some of the topics that the show touched on, mainly being focused on sex or drugs. There was also just a mild use of profanity paired with the frequent reference to sex and drugs as they told jokes throughout the episodes. This is to be expected. In my opinion, this is to be expected. Whenever characters come back and they're much older than they were before, you want to show in some way that they are adults now. They are no longer children. You know what I mean? And so I get that the writers maybe included some of this stuff in order to illustrate that. However, ultimately, it shouldn't have been to the point that people felt like they couldn't even get through an episode because of how much of it was stuffed in there. And that seems to have been their fatal mistake, according to these 3 reviewers. Now, many people who went to watch Fuller House had also seen Full House. In fact, they probably watched it as teenagers or kids with their parents, remembered exactly how it made them feel, and so they wanted to share that feeling with their children. And that is going to be something that is going to be touched on throughout this entire series, is this feeling of nostalgia. Nostalgia can be a very powerful feeling that you have towards something or from something. And ultimately, I keep on saying ultimately, but inevitably, it will influence your decisions when it comes to certain things, like petitioning for a show to come back on the air. Now, everyone wanted it to be kept the same as it was in Full House. They wanted it to be cute. They wanted it to be soft and fluffy and only brushing across topics that were harder in material once in a while, rather than in every episode. So while the show was initially successful, with the excitement around seeing the returning characters from Full House, seeing them much older, wanting to know what has been going on all these years and what they've been through, it died down once people started to watch the show and value it for what it was. This show appeared on Netflix in 2016 and ran until 2020, having a total of 5 seasons for this show. So this show wasn't even given the opportunity to reach a full 8 like its parent show. Now, they also got canceled for different reasons, and I feel like that's important to note. The first one, still wildly popular when it was taken off of the air, and it was only stopped because it had become too costly to make. Now this one, it's kind of the exact opposite. They had gotten a deal with Netflix because it was going to be not nearly as expensive as it originally was to make episodes, because now you could stream them on Netflix. And Netflix, having over 1,500 different shows on its streaming service, they hand out deals left and right to people. And now it's important to note that while they hand out deals left and right, that's how sometimes shows can get lost in the mix. And that's exactly what happened with Fuller House. After the initial shock and impact that it made, bringing back old characters and letting you get to know them again, and letting them introduce you to the extended family of Fuller House, it had worn off. The nostalgia wasn't strong enough to carry it to 8 seasons. And so that's something that we are going to look out for as we go over other reboots, is what reboots are relying on the nostalgia in order to stay alive, and what shows are creating new connections with their audience in order to keep themselves afloat and keep themselves interesting. In conclusion, we can see that Fuller House was only able to succeed because of how well Full House had done originally. Had this not been a reboot, and had it not been carrying the name of Full House in its own title of Fuller House, it's safe to say that Fuller House would have been lucky to last past season 2. And the reason I say this is that it's just a bit of common knowledge, and I say that as a performer, as someone who has been involved in the arts, that most television series are guaranteed 2 seasons at least. Sometimes it's 1 if they believe that the show could be a little risky, but most shows, especially if they are very well pitched, will be guaranteed to have at least 2 seasons to prove themselves, and then maybe renewed for more after that. Now, Full House only stopped being produced because of how costly things had become. Now, without the same regular full-time team of Full House, you like that pun? Both cast and production crew alike, Fuller House just did not have the same gentle touch that parents sought for in the television show that they could sit and watch with their kids. Mom and dad want to be able to ask questions during the show like, have you ever felt like this? Or have you ever done that? Now, children want to be able to say, I wish we did this. I wanted to be treated like that. This show, Full House, had that kind of impact on families. I can speak from personal experience watching this show that sometimes you would be there watching it with your parent, and it would allow you to open up to each other as a family. And Fuller House just did not have that same effect on people. And it's because of all the inappropriate aspects getting in the way. Some parents... not all, but some parents like to keep their children sheltered from certain sensitive topics for as long as possible until they feel like they are at the appropriate age to discuss such things. That has been this episode of Lemon Talks. See, we covered Fuller House, why it wasn't as popular as Full House, and the aspects surrounding its cancellation versus its parent show, Full House's cancellation. Now, I just want to be sure that everybody knows and understands that we are only going to be covering one reboot per episode in this reboot series. In the next episode, I have yet to decide which of these reboots I want to take on, but just know that it will be something similar to this one, where we will take a look at both shows, why they were canceled, what people loved about them, and what kept them alive or what ultimately killed them. Now, I am doing this an in-depth analysis on each episode so that way we can get a fair and accurate analysis when we get to the end of this road. I could have scrunched all of this into a 15-minute video or even 20-minute video, but that wouldn't have been fair to anybody who worked on these shows, because I know that I can't speak for them, but I can speak for myself personally that on any show that I've been involved in, that there's always been a certain degree of passion that has went into my art. And that passion, when it gets overlooked or when it gets summarized, it can hurt just a little bit as an artist, or at the very least be annoying. And so instead of being naive about it, instead of trying to summarize it and just give you the gist of all of this, we are going to do this with each reboot that we cover. Again, we are going to cover 5 different reboots, and when we get to the final episode of this series, if there are any details that I don't want to cover in that particular video, I'm going to refer back to these episodes, and feel free to go back and watch them for yourselves. I certainly hope you do. But that has been this episode of Lemon Talks, and I hope you all have a great day.